There are several reasons why Africa is so poor and will continue to stay so. First of all, almost every second, a person from sub-Saharan Africa lives below the poverty line. And that's a shocking fact. One major reason, that is religion, is the number one cause of poverty in Africa. The African continent is famous for its poverty, of course, but many people don't know how the complete reason why Africa is just so poor. So here in this video, we will look from the point of view how Africa is blessed with rich resources, mineral wealth, and yet the whole continent is just in complete darkness. When you are so blessed with resources this way, it is just the duties of the leaders to put those resources into good use, but we are not seeing that. So what is the poorest country in Africa? Well, according to the Business Insider, the poorest country in Africa is Burundi. The Republic of Burundi is a landlocked nation in East Africa, bordered by Rwanda, Tanzania, and then DR Congo. So information gathered and verified by Business Insider from Africa shows that Burundi is currently the poorest country, not only in Africa, but the entire world. We can also talk of South Sudan, which comes as the poorest country in the world, with a poverty rate of 82% as of 2021. Just look at these shocking statistics, and you understand that the misery in Africa is just alarming. First of all, let's go through some poverty statistics. If you look at the facts and figures, you understand what I'm talking about. Statistics show that almost 50% of the African population lives in abject poverty. These people do not have access to basic human needs. We are talking about nutrition, clean water, electricity, shelter, and the like. 47% of the African population, they live on less than $1.90 a day or less. 2 in 5 African adults are illiterates. Imagine that, which means education is just a big issue in Africa. And out of 738 million people globally who lack access to clean water, about 37% are living in sub-Saharan Africa, which means sub-Saharan Africa is almost the hub of poverty in Africa. This is where, if you want to witness poverty with your own eyes, come to sub-Saharan Africa, where 45% of the population, they live at less than $2 a day. That's sub-Saharan Africa. It has both the highest rate of children living in extreme poverty. The World Bank currently said that 1 in 3 Africans live below the poverty line. That constitutes a whopping 70% of the global poor, and the numbers just keep rising. So why are our leaders they are just dumb, doing nothing, as if they are just deaf to just steal and then fill their stomachs and go? That has been the trend from generation to generation, and it's high time the youth took matters into their own hands. One of the greatest disasters facing this continent is just how the portion of Africa has been blessed with wealth and resources, and yet food can be so scarce, such that you have almost 16 to 20 countries. If you are listing the top 10, top 20 countries in the world, you find that more than half will come from Africa. Hard discussions on the perennial African development questions were ignited by one Reverend Walter, who in a TEDx talk suggested that religion and its cascading effect is the biggest obstacle to development in Africa. He also proposed solutions to how Africans can free themselves from religious slavery. Religious slavery is a big issue. Slavery has become the modern day form of colonialism. Although some African countries have managed to gain independence, like Ghana, they have not been able to stay self-reliant. So if a nation is independent and yet it is not self-reliant, it actually amounts to ground zero. nothing has been done yet. It's not an achievement. Independence is never an achievement. In Africa, the citizens are just waiting for better life in heaven. Instead of thinking about how to move their life forward and then improve living conditions for the masses. We have Africans spending their whole time in church, casting demons and praying for miracles to happen. If you have people this way who believe so much in God and then prayer, and they fail to work, how will they get their basic necessities? So for religion, it's always a big issue. You can't talk about poverty in Africa without mentioning religion. The situation is very bad, and I have to say, poverty is an extremely complex subject. In Ghana, for instance, I got very frustrated with the corruption and cultural caste system. It's so entrenched in their lives. I always felt that it would be an ideal place to invest in large factories. But having worked in a couple of mines, I couldn't just understand. Workers with real natural talent would be overlooked by local leaders. Meanwhile, people often have to use totally unsuitable workers for the task in hand. If you move to Nigeria, the last couple of corrupt leaders from the 50s to the 80s have all failed the country. We just hope that the African population can put away their religious and tribalistic ideals and come to understand that the rest of the world are far advancing and leaving Africa in abject poverty. It's just the duty of the leaders to inculcate the spirit of good leadership, starting from the basic schools to the highest level. If corruption is not fought from the beginning to the end, you have students going through the educational system and then climbing the mantle of leadership, yet they lack ideas as to how to move the country forward. In South Africa, for instance, there is just total lack of empathy for their fellow citizens. Race corruption-based appointments in the private sector continue to cause sordid situation in the whole African continent. If you look at the enormous agricultural, mineral, and then energy and tourism wealth at South Africa's disposal, the country should be doing far better than it is doing today. I can say Africans only have themselves to blame for the messy situation they are witnessing today. So basically, even if there are improvements in terms of education and people become more skilled and talented, those people cannot contribute anything meaningful to the economy because their corrupt government even result in people migrating to the wealthier countries. So the brain drain phenomena is another cause of poverty. Yeah, the intelligent graduates, they've lost hope in the country and they are trooping abroad to seek greener pastures. And I must also mention that the issue of slave trade really hit Africa hard. And if you are talking about the costs of poverty in Africa, we have to let's face the facts. During the slave trade, the rulers of some regions sold Africans, and then they were even killed, and then made to practice cultures that were not in agreement with their values. Africa was easily taken advantage of because one village or tribe didn't just care about the others. So why is Africa not developed? Well, another factor is the lack of technological advancement. Without engineers, doctors, scientists, Africa can never develop technologically. A country is not much of a country without advancement in tech, as we all know. Even after World War II, Russia and the US were in competition to obtain the best engineers, doctors, and scientists from Germany. They already had their own business people, and the only German politicians offered was the ability to test the rope strength. If you see pictures of deplorable living conditions in Africa, you just cringe at the extreme poverty situation in Africa. Historically, the largest African empire exported raw materials across the Sahara to get rich. But once those empires fell, they often resorted to slave trade to make up for the lost money. If you consider the Shanghai Empire or the success of the Mali Empire, for example, they had a 20-year period of civil war where opposite factions sold the captured soldiers as slaves in northern Africa. Before then, the state was built around the city of Gao, a rich trading city. This was largely due to the unclear rules regarding the line of succession once a king died. Slave trade and why Africa is so poor. If you want to discuss this subject, it can take millions of years to actually finish it. Slave trade is something that was so regrettable. It shouldn't have even happened in the history of humanity, yet it happened. But can we blame our poverty or the poverty of Africa on only slave trade? Slave trade is only one part of the equation. If you look at slave trade, it was already well established in Africa long before Western colonists exploited it and then started systematically buying slaves. And this indirectly forced those opposing kingdoms and tribes to either sell more resources than they could ever gather or sell, further destabilizing the economy back then. Slave trade is a very touchy subject, of course, but we cannot keep sounding the horn of slave trade as the only reason why Africa is poor. There are other things that are holding the country backwards, and then the whole black union. One thing I must speak about is foreign aid. Our African leaders of late, some of them are so out of their mind that they keep trusting the future of their economy on foreign aid. If you are depending too much on foreign aid, how will you develop? Every minute, every hour, you have politicians begging for loans and then assistance abroad. Why is Africa still in poverty? Even despite the global community offering billions and millions of loans in foreign aid, the global community has spent billions of dollars in aid over the past several decades, trying to wipe out poverty in Africa. Nevertheless, poverty persists in many African countries. So why doesn't international aid work? Here is the reason. The people who designed these foreign aid projects have no real intention of helping the African people. It is more of a symbolic gesture to just pacify the people at home and then make them feel good for the meantime. But this is not, foreign aid can never be a long-term solution to the poverty situation in Africa. Let's be honest. The reason is that foreign aid actually doesn't measure the success by the results of the work, like the number of people employed, quality of life, increased needs of people, and how much money they put in the process. But since nobody at home really pays attention to these small factors, they can make public declarations without success, and no one will even ask them for thoughtful insights. Here is the wise quotation. You have to look at it. If you give a man a fish, he will just eat for a day or two. But if you teach that same man how to fish, the person will be able to gather more food for future and eat for a lifetime. And that's literally an African proverb or so. So what the African continent needs to know is how to just stop the ignorance, fight corruption, reduce dependence on foreign aid, exploit their own natural resources, and then like the Western countries do, and Africa can gradually develop. A beautiful country like Rwanda is already providing hope for the rest of the African countries to follow. I actually admire Rwanda, Kigali, because of their clean city. Sanitation, it works hand in hand with development. If a country is developing or a continent is developing, it should also develop health-wise. Poor sanitation is closely associated with bad health. And at a time where COVID-19 is a major public health concern, African leaders should be learning how to develop the country cities. The town and planning units should be looking at how to make all those systems to work.